So for the last few weeks we've been looking at what's called the Mandala of the Five Buddhas, these set of five archetypal figures who embody five different aspects of the enlightened mind, and also ways we can approach the enlightened mind, ways we can get a sort of imaginal taste of what it might be like to be more enlightened. So I mean, enlightenment can be just too far away and too multifaceted for us to even imagine it a little bit. But by connecting imaginatively with figures that embody just one aspect, one simpler version, that can make it a lot easier to approach for us. So that's what we've been trying to look at in this mandala. So yeah, enlightenment is outside of our present experience. It could seem we just don't have any way of getting a handle on it at all. But by using things that we do have some experience of, the figures in the mandala can evoke feelings and emotions and attitudes that are sort of echo of what it might be like to be more enlightened, to be enlightened. So the figures on the mandala use different things like colour. Colours stir up different emotions, evoke different attitudes. The figures are each said to have a characteristic temperature, not something that's usually brought out, but so it is. They are also associated with particular parts of the body. People didn't know that either. I just discovered. And so the functions of those parts of the body. They use the time of day, different animals, gestures, objects, all these different symbols. All these things that might evoke something in us, that might give us some echo of the enlightened state, might sort of give us a handle on it. So that's what it's about, really. It's about evoking enlightenment in an imaginal way. So we could ask ourselves, well, what would it be like? What would it be like to be enlightened, to be liberated? And can we just get a hint of that? Do we have a way of imagining that? So to kick off tonight's talk, I'd like you to just try and imagine something. Just try and imagine. What would it be like to be sitting high up on a mountain, high up on a mountain, in the clear sky of dawn, just as the first light comes into the sky. And we're so high up, we're sitting almost in the stratosphere. The sky is almost that blue-black that you get at high altitude, and the air is clear and sharp like a diamond, very, very bracing. So we are absolutely sharp and absolutely wide awake. Totally, precisely on the ball. Seeing every detail of everything sharply and precisely. Even seeing what's far away and far down below us, all the goings on down there in the sleepy, murky valleys. So there are farms and villages and towns and cities way down below us, and people going about their business, and we see all of that in every detail. All the tiny little houses and all the tiny little figures, crystal clear as diamond, with eyes that are a bit like eagles' eyes. Eagles apparently can see a rabbit from miles up in the sky. Our eyes are even better than that. So we see all this goings on with diamond clarity. And we see ourselves down there, among the goings on. We see all the little happenings that make us anxious. We see all the things that we might want, all the things we might worry about. But we're so far above this. Our vision is so much more expansive and wider than those little concerns. Our perspective is vast. We're right up where we can see the curve of the earth. So none of those things that's going on down there to us can blow us around in any way. We're immovable, firmly established, totally rooted in positive states, as solid as the mountain we're sitting on, and the earth that mountain's a part of. So to express that complete stability and rootedness, we reach down and we touch the ground we're sitting on. We touch our spot on the mountain, which grows out of the solid, immovable earth, with a gesture of complete groundedness and complete confidence. So, in a way, that's my attempt to evoke what the Buddha of the Mandala I'm going to talk about tonight communicates to us about what it might be like to be enlightened. I'm going to talk about the Buddha Aksobya, the blue Buddha of the East, whose time of day is the clear, cool daybreak, and whose name means immovable or imperturbable, the one that can't be blown around, can't be pushed around. So that's, I hope I've managed to evoke a little bit of what that's trying to get across, and we'll look at different aspects of that as I go along with the talk. But as I talk about Aksobya, I think we need to remember that he does embody just one aspect of enlightenment. One set of connected qualities. Taken on his own, Aksobya might make enlightenment seem quite cool and detached, maybe a little bit too cool and detached. But to get an all-round idea of enlightenment, we need to see him in the same frame as, for example, the Buddha who sits opposite him on the Mandala, the Buddha who sits in the west of the Mandala, Amitabha, the red Buddha, the Buddha of warm, passionate emotions, the Buddha of love, the Buddha of metta, the Buddha of compassion, the Buddha of joy in others. Enlightenment combines those two qualities. We've got Aksobya in the east, blue, cool. We've got Amitabha in the west, red, warm. And enlightenment combines those two qualities. And I think we just need to remember that. And to some extent, I'm going to contrast those as I go through this talk. But we do need to remember that, because if we need to remember that any one way we look at enlightenment isn't the whole picture. And if we haven't got the whole picture, we may end up with a goal that's too one-sided, and then our approach to the Dharma may be too one-sided, and then we may end up too one-sided. So we just need to remember that. I think that we can say that enlightenment is cool and detached, but we can also say that it's warm and completely engaged, and engaged with others in the world. And they might seem like opposites. They might seem like opposites to us, but they're not opposites to the enlightened mind. The enlightened mind transcends those opposites. So as I've said, Aksobya, the figure I'm going to talk about, is the Buddha of the East. He sits in the east of the Mandala, and his time of day is the dawn. And honestly, these figures do each have a characteristic temperature, and he is traditionally said to be cool. He's very cool. Dead cool. He's the cool aspect in contrast to Amitabha's warm aspect of enlightenment. And Aksobya's body is made of this deep blue light. Blue is the colour of the sky. It's the colour of high altitudes. It's the colour of big views and distant perspectives. It's the colour of seeing a long way. And I always associate Aksobya's deep blue colour with the colour of the sky at high altitude. It's so deep. It's almost like the blue we see in pictures taken from the edge of space, where we can see the curve of the world and the continents laid out down below. Where the deep blue of the upper atmosphere sort of merges into the black of space. And up that high, it's a place of just vast perspectives, in very, very distant vision, clear vision, and it's also very cold and very bracing. And when we're that high up, we can look down on all the petty goings-on down in the murk and the pollution on the surface of the earth, all the things that normally blow us around all over the place, and none of it seems that important. We can see the big picture, so we can be a bit above it. So the blueness, the very blueness of Aksobya brings something, evokes something for us. And Aksobya is shown with his right hand in the gesture of touching the earth. It's called the earth touching mudra. And we see this Buddha, this mudra, this gesture quite a lot in pictures of the historical Buddha. It's one of the characteristic gestures of the historical Buddha. If you see Buddha statues, you'll see them often doing one or other mudra, one or other gesture, like fearlessness. But one of the most common is touching the earth, and that refers to an episode in the mythic account of the Buddha's enlightenment. When just before his breakthrough into a completely new level of reality, he is challenged by Mara. Mara is the sort of embodiment of everything that holds us back and stops us progressing. And Mara challenges him, saying, "What right have you to sit on this diamond seat of enlightenment? What right have you to sit where only the greatest of human beings can sit? You petty princeling." And we're told that the Buddha just simply reached down and touched the earth. And it's called calling the earth to witness. He asked the earth itself, nature itself, to bear witness, to back him up to the fact that he deserved to sit where he was sitting. So it's a gesture of great confidence and stability and groundedness. So that's another aspect of the Enlightenment experiences, the Enlightenment experience that Aksobya personifies and symbolises. And it's related to his name, the immovable, the imperturbable. He's supremely grounded, supported by the earth. And his gesture refers to that episode. He's solid as the earth. And among the things that all of the Buddhas have is an element, and his element is the earth. So it might seem a bit of a contradiction here. On the one hand, we've got this sort of stratospheric, elevated quality, this blue of the high altitudes, and we've got the earth, touching the earth. They might seem a long way apart. But enlightenment is all about the union of opposites. And later I'm just going to explore a bit about how those two apparent opposites might be related. So he's traditionally shown dressed in royal robes, like the robes of a monk, but transformed to another level, transmuted. They're more like the robes of a great king. They're royal robes. And he's seated on a sumptuous throne, which is supported by elephants. So his animal is an elephant, is the elephant. All the Buddhas also have an animal, and his is the elephant. And it's an appropriate animal because you can't push an elephant around. So he's sitting on his throne supported by elephants, and in his left hand he holds what's called a vajra, which we don't have. You have to imagine one. If you've never seen a vajra before. Vajras are usually often called diamond thunderbolts. And the fact that Vajra, the diamond thunderbolt, is the symbol of Aksobya and the symbol of his whole family, in that sense. It's not something we're very familiar with in our culture, this idea of a Vajra. But this Vajra, as a diamond thunderbolt, is a common symbol in Buddhism. So it's often called a diamond thunderbolt, and with reason, because it combines qualities of a diamond and qualities of a thunderbolt, or a lightning strike. So think about it. So what happens when lightning strikes? We go either complete black, whoosh, suddenly everything is absolutely crystal clear, absolutely starkly visible. Lightning strikes light everything up with total clarity, even with harsh clarity. And they wake us up, especially if they're nearby, crash, they make a great crash. So we wake up. They wake us up. So that's a bit about lightning. Diamonds. If we look into a diamond, I don't very often get the opportunity, but if you look into a diamond, we see this, it seems to be full of this immensely clear, crystal clear, brilliant, precise light. Loads of rainbows in there, but absolutely crystal clear and bright. Full of cold, sharp, glittering light. I believe that the slang word for diamonds used to be ice. So there's this icy quality there, just absolutely crystal clear. And as well as being full of this bright light, diamonds are also hard and sharp. I believe they're the hardest substance known. Any physicists here would contradict me, I'm quite happy to be, but I believe they're the hardest substance known. A diamond will cut anything, and nothing can cut a diamond. So this Vajra, this diamond thunderbolt, which is sort of shaped like something you might want to throw, symbolises Aksobya's wisdom. It's a sort of wisdom that illuminates everything, like the stark clarity of a flash of lightning. It wakes us up like a lightning strike, like a thunderbolt in the night. Tremendous noise. His wisdom is clear and precise as the light in a diamond. And his wisdom will cut through any obstacle, any obscuration, any fogginess or fuzziness or confusion to show things precisely as they are. So each Buddha is seen as being the head of a whole family of figures, related figures that share to some extent in their qualities. And Aksobya's family is the Vajra family. And the figures in his family all represent what we sometimes call the Vajric approach to the spiritual life. Vajra becomes an adjective, a Vajric approach. So an approach that depends on clear seeing, on cutting through obstacles and delusions. And that's often contrasted. That sort of Vajric approach is often contrasted with what we might call the Padma approach of the Buddha who sits opposite him on the Mandala. So, as I said, we need to think of Aksobya really at the same time as we think of Amitabha, who sits opposite him, the red Buddha on the Mandala. So and Amitabha's symbol is the Padma, the lotus, the water lily. It's a growing thing. It's soft. It's beautiful. It grows. Very different from this hard, cutting Vajra. So the two approaches are often contrasted, the Vajric approach and the Padma approach. Amitabha and his lotus family embody a gentler approach to enlightenment, based more on gradual growth, like the growth of a plant, gradual emergence, growth of positive emotion, an approach that may seem kinder. But in a way they're two aspects, and it's not like one is right and one is wrong. I think sometimes in our society there can be a tendency to think one is right and one is wrong. But actually they're two aspects that are both needed. So that the Vajra comes to symbolise a whole approach, and he's holding the Vajra in his hand. So each of the Buddhas on the Mandala, is said to have their own type of wisdom, their own style of wisdom, and also what's called their own poison. A sort of negative mental state or a personality type that is their poison. So each Buddha represents a way their poison and that aspect of the personality can be transformed, completely transformed into an aspect of enlightenment. It's as though the negative emotions we experience have within them the seeds of enlightenment. And if we can approach them in the right way, if we can use them in the right way, transform them, harness them, rather than trying to suppress them and cut off their energy, we can transform them into something positive. That's what it seems to be saying. We can transform the poison into the wisdom. And Aksobya's wisdom is called the mirror-like wisdom. It's the wisdom that sees everything with that sort of precise clarity, exactly as it is, just as though we were looking at it in a mirror. It's the mirror-like wisdom. And his poison is anger or ill will, hatred. And all the things that go along with it, irritability, criticalness, aggression, competitiveness, all those things. That's his poison. So his approach to enlightenment transforms those poisons, or it's said to transform those poisons into his mirror-like wisdom. So it's as though those emotions, ugly as they can seem, contain within them the seeds of wisdom. So Aksobya transforms them, transforms that sort of wanting to cut through, that sort of anger at people, for example. It transforms that into this ability to cut through vagueness and falsehood, clarity of vision, intolerance with half-truths and untruths, ability to see the big picture, ability to see what really matters in the forest of detail, ability to see what's wrong and what needs changing in a situation, ability to clearly see when views aren't in accord with reality and when they're holding us back. So it transforms that sort of personality type, those negative emotions, into those positives. And that's the approach of the Vajra family, to use the energy of anger or ill will and transform it into a force that cuts through obscurity and vagueness, a force that smashes obstacles, destroys what needs to be destroyed, knocks down what blocks us off the truth. So in that approach, anger becomes energy, it becomes Vajra energy, clear energy. A sharp, clear energy directed at cutting through untruth and vagueness and stagnation and a sort of cosy collusion that wants to not rock the boat, even if that means stagnation. So it's sharp and it's clear. And often in Tibetan Buddhism, people are seen as having a sort of temperamental connection with one or other of these figures. A sort of affinity with one of these figures. So people of Amitabha's Padma type maybe will tend to be strong on desire and enjoyment. Perhaps with a tendency to addictiveness and possessiveness in relationships. So they'll enjoy life, they'll really enjoy things, they'll enjoy food, they'll enjoy all sorts of things. Enjoy people, friendly, nice people, but perhaps with that tendency to addictiveness, to unclarity, and to possessiveness in relationships. They may be better at feeling than at thinking clearly. People with Padma family affinities perhaps prefer harmony to truth. In a discussion, well, we'll just, we'll let that pass. We don't have to get at the clear, cold truth. Let's keep harmony. Even if that means ignoring the truth, even if it means things don't get done effectively, which of course would annoy the dickens out of a Vajra person. In contrast, the people of the Vajra personality type who feel a particular affinity with Aksobya and his Vajric approach might tend to be a bit irritable and critical and a bit reactive, might tend to see what's wrong in situations, or what's wrong in people's logic, or what's wrong in conclusions. If you throw things at the politicians on the TV, you're probably a Vajra type. Maybe a bit impatient. Why can't I get on with it? May seem to think and act more quickly than others. It might seem that everybody else is so slow. Tend to get annoyed by lies and half-truths and willingness. Tend to give priority to the truth over harmony, even if it means destroying harmony. So two sort of contrasting personality types, the Amitabha Padma type and the Vajra type. Obviously everybody's a bit of a mix of both. So Chogyam Trungpa, I don't really know how to pronounce that, it's a well-known Tibetan teacher, says this of the Vajra family. The Vajra family is extremely sharp, intellectual, analytical, cool, cold, possibly unfriendly, but always on the dot. Seeing things as they are, very precise, very direct, very sharp. Reactivity is very high. You're ready to jump, ready to pursue and criticize. Intellectually sharp. A person of the Vajra family knows how to evaluate arguments logically, can tell whether logic is true or false. I have a sense of openness and perspective. So that's pretty much a repeat of what I've just said, really. And I think there's a certain amount of truth in this connection between that sort of wisdom and that sort of personality type. If you've ever been around really successful scholars, you might find they're not dead prone to sort of all cosy agreeing with each other. They sort of sometimes get into quite sort of heated arguments, and there can be that sense of seeing the faults, going for the faults and really attacking them, which also is an aspect of and a certain sort of intelligence. So obviously we've all got, it's way too simplistic to say Vajra types and Padma types. We've all got a bit of all of these different Buddha families. We've all got a bit of all the different poisons. We've all got the seeds of the different enlightenment qualities. But we may find that one family rings a particular bell for us. We might recognise ourselves as, I'm a bit more of a Vajra person, or I'm a bit more of a Padma type person. Having a bit of an affinity. And I'll return to that at the end. So that's a little bit about Aksobya and his wisdom and his poison. I'd like to just return to something I talked about earlier, which is the fact that I described Aksobya as blue as the colour of the sky, or the colour of high altitudes where we can see vast distances, on the edge of space, exhilarating, bracing, way up. That sense of being up above it all, above ordinary concerns. And then we've got the groundedness, the earth-touching mudra, and the fact that his element is the earth. And he's immovable. And don't they seem contradictory? Don't they seem contradictory? And actually, I think there's a really clear connection between the two. Because as long as we don't have some sort of higher vision and wider perspective, if we're not seeing the bigger picture, then we'll be constantly blown one way or another by events. We'll be the opposite of unshakable. Unless we've got some higher point of reference, everything that happens to us just seems so important. Our life is this constant melodrama. Our wants seem so important, our likes seem so important, our dislikes seem so important. We'll be sad or angry or disappointed or anxious thousands of times about things that don't really matter. And then it's gone, and they might not as well have been. We'll be on this constant roller coaster of highs and lows about things that happen to us, blown this way and that, by small events, our own feelings, what other people think, we'll be dreadfully influenced by what other people think, etc. But if we've got some of Aksobya's uplifted quality, if we see things from that broader perspective and got a higher vision of what life's about, then we'll have the stability of character that's not so easily blown around by passing events. We'll have some principles to base our life on. Some stability. If we're rooted in reality, then we will be like a plant that's deeply rooted in something very nurturing. We'll grow, we'll be solid, we'll be rooted, we can't be pushed around. So the fact of having some sort of higher perspective is what gives Aksobya that sort of quality of rootedness, groundedness, not being able to be pushed around. From that point of view, we just need to develop. We need to develop ourselves as an individual. We need to become the sort of person who can be autonomous, who can make our own decisions, who's not going to be blown around by other people. We need to be basing ourselves on some principles that we adhere to. that we stick to. So if we've got that broader perspective, if our life is about more than our own likes and dislikes, then we're not so pushed around by what happens, by the passing events. And we'll develop the quality called equanimity. Equa, equal, anima, soul, or mind. So sameness of mind. We'll be able to be in a positive state in circumstances, whether they seem positive or negative. We'll develop the quality called shanti, sort of patient forbearance. We'll be able to be in positive states no matter what. So shanti is not stoical indifference, it is that ability to be in positive states, no matter what's happening. No matter what people say about us, no matter what people think about us, no matter what people do. And that's only possible if we've got a vision that's about something higher than our own well-being, our own likes and dislikes. Only possible if we've got a wider perspective. That makes us immune. It makes us immune to passing events and the silliness of people around us. And Aksobya's elephants, I think, express some of this. They bring a new dimension to it. Elephants aren't just stable. Elephants achieve things. Elephants are really strong and they get things done. They move trees around, you know. They're real workers, elephants. If they're going in a particular direction, they're not going to be diverted. And some humans waving their arms aren't going to make a difference. So they're not just symbols of stability, but also of continuity of purpose. What Sangha actually calls continuity of purpose. Having a sort of thread in our life based on our principles that we just stick to, we act upon. We need continuity of purpose to keep practicing the Dharma in a society that doesn't understand what it's all about. We need continuity of purpose if we're going to build a Sangha or achieve anything substantial for the Dharma. And that only comes, that continuity of purpose, from a higher vision, even from a mythic vision of what things are about. So that without it, setbacks just always knock us off course and it's just too difficult. But if we do have a higher vision of what life's about, we can keep going, no matter what. So we won't be so concerned by, well, I don't know, all the things, our comfort or our discomfort or our wealth or our lack of wealth or our popularity or our lack of popularity or our standing in other people's eyes, or whether what we are espousing seems fashionable at the moment or is unfashionable at the moment. Won't matter to us. We need to be seeing things from a position that's above all of those. And that's what Aksobya can give us. We need to develop. I've contrasted Aksobya's approach and Amitabha's approach. And we need a bit of both. We actually need both. We need to develop some wisdom. The spiritual life isn't just about being nice, and it's not just about positive emotion, although it can sometimes seem like that. And sometimes, you can get the impression that in our society, to be a sort of Vajric person is wrong, and to be a Padma person is right. But actually, if we were all just Padma people and just nice, we wouldn't get very far. We actually need a bit of cutting edge, and we need a bit of wisdom. To quote Sangha, the only nice Buddhist is a dead Buddhist. Just being nice means, well, we just do what other people like, because that's when they think we're nice, when we do what they like. When they do, if we stick to principles, we're sometimes going to hit we're sometimes going to come up against other people. They're not going to. It'll go against what they want, basically. So we need some of that Vajric quality, and more important, we need to develop some wisdom. We need to develop at a lower level than wisdom. We need to develop what's called in the Dharma right view. The ability to think clearly, to see false ideas for what they are. We need some ideas that are actually a bit more aligned with reality than the ones that we've just picked up along the way. Our ideas about reality are a bit like a map, and to rehash a joke that I told on the men's event just now, if our map doesn't align with reality, then we might set off for the Derwent Valley from Sheffield, but we might end up in Grimethorpe. And we might wonder why. And because if our map doesn't represent what's on the ground, we're going to end up in the wrong place. We need some maps, some words and concepts about the nature of things that match the way things are. And when people say, oh, but the Dharma is beyond words and concepts, treat that with a pinch of salt, because actually we are all stuffed with words and concepts. We have been stuffed with words and concepts that we take for granted since we were that big. And what we need to do is to find some better ones, actually, some ones that are more in accord with reality and don't end up in Grimethorpe when we try to follow them, but end up where we want to go. So we need some principles to live by. And if we've got principles to live by, if we're rooted in reality, grounded, we'll be immovable, like Aksobya. And we'll achieve like his elephants. So, okay, how are we going to do that? How are we going to have right view at this lower level? Not necessarily wisdom, but ideas that are in accord with reality. What's the traditional teaching about how we develop this, which is the 3 levels of wisdom. Shuddha Maya Pranya, Chinta Maya Pranya, and Vadanya Maya Pranya. Shuddha Maya Pranya means wisdom, something like wisdom through hearing, wisdom through reflecting, and wisdom through meditating, or wisdom through becoming. So, to develop wisdom, we need first of all to hear the Dharma, or to read the Dharma. We need to come in contact with the Dharma. And by the Dharma, I mean, I think we probably mean the real Dharma. We need to watch, there's an awful lot of stuff around which may seem a bit like the Dharma, but isn't. If it doesn't have any Vajric quality, it probably isn't the Dharma. If it just feels like spiritual candy floss and just makes us feel really nice and is totally sweet, but then vanishes, has no substance, it probably isn't the Dharma. And I'm afraid there's a whole industry of churning that out because it makes loads of money churning out candy floss Dharma. So, good idea to perhaps stick to canonical Dharma. I would also recommend Sangha Night. He's got some of that Vajric edge that means it's okay. I would recommend canonical Dharma, but there's a problem there. Which is that it's quite difficult to get into. Okay. Which probably brings us along to the second one, which is through reflecting, but I'll talk a little bit more about it. There's a few things we might say. Well, there's some canonical Dharma which would be good to just have a look at, even though we may not be able to have the opportunity to study it. Maybe the Dhammapada. Short verses, short pithy verses, packing a real punch of meaning. Maybe just read the Dhammapada. Maybe the Bodhicharya Avatara. If it starts talking about hells, just forget it. Just turn that page over and read something else. But the Bodhicharya Avatar's got tons of really good Dharma in it. So canonical Dharma, stuff from the Pukka tradition, stuff from the great masters, not stuff from somebody who just wants to sell 50,000 books, would be really good. So we need to hear the Dharma, read the Dharma, we need to go to talks, we need to, etc., etc. It just needs to go in the ears. But having gone in the ears, we need to reflect on it. And I reckon the easiest way to reflect on the Dharma for most people is to study it with others, actually. Because when we study it with others, we see it from all different angles, we hear different views about it, we clarify our misconceptions, we suddenly think, oh, I haven't seen it that way. It's like we suddenly see that if we're in a study group with 5 people, we see it through 5 different eyes. And we can just get a much better perspective on it. And the act of reading it, making notes, talking about it, really sort of brings it alive, really is an active reflection on it. So I can't recommend studying the Dharma too much, actually. Once again, according to Candy Floss Buddhism, we shouldn't study the Dharma. It's all about beyond words and concepts. The intellect is bad. Pish. without an intellect, we're not going to get there. Without an intellect, we're not going to get there. We don't have to be geniuses, but we need to be able to think a bit. We need to be able to reflect on the Dharma. What we need to do, really, I mean, so if you get a chance to study the Dharma, take it. If there's an event on here where we're studying the Dharma, take the chance. One of the things that we do a lot of in the Mitra course is studying texts. It's a really good thing to do. It's a way. What we do is over time, by reading the Dharma, hearing the Dharma, talking about the Dharma with others, reflecting on the Dharma ourselves, it's as though we soak ourselves in this bath of true ideas, this bath of right view, and it gradually sort of dyes us until eventually it sort of starts to dye our bones dharmic colour. Currently our bones are sort of dyed a sort of 21st century secular colour, and we need to sort of soak ourselves in a different liquid for a bit. And it is a slow process. It's a process that takes a while. It takes a long while. We just soak ourselves in dharmic ideas. And it's those people who know, who've been around the Dharma for a long time, it just gradually has this effect of you start to, through not through your own qualities, but just through soaking yourself in the Dharma, you start to see things in a dharmic way. And what that means is in a true way. It's a right view. So we need to do that. We need to reflect. We need to study with others. We need to talk the Dharma. We need to let it sink in so that it becomes part of us. And that's Chintamaya Prajna, the second way to wisdom. And the final way, the final, this is stepwise, incidentally, 1, 2, and 3. The final one is Bhavana Maya Prajna. And Bhavana means meditation. It also means becoming. So it's the wisdom that we get through meditation, but it could also mean becoming wisdom. We become wisdom. And this is where we do get to the area where it's beyond words and concepts. We've let the Dharma sink into our bones so it's become part of the very fabric of our being. The concepts and the words of the Dharma become part of the very fabric of our being. And then, perhaps when we're meditating, when our mind is focused and clear, bam! Perhaps we start to see something in quite a different way. All of that just... everybody must have had these moments where something we knew about becomes something we actually know. And it's like, light bulb's gone on. Well, it's like that, but it's about reality. And it might not be all at once, it might be lots and lots of little light bulbs going on. But when our mind's in that sort of state, cultured through meditation, calmed, focused, clear, and when we're soaked in the Dharma, then we can start to really see things as they are. And it ain't going to happen, although it's beyond words and concepts, it ain't going to happen without the words and concepts. It's not going to, like we sit down and we just meditate and it's going to happen without knowing the Dharma. To get beyond words and concepts, we need words and concepts because we're already stuffed with them. We're already completely ruled by words and concepts we've picked up. So we need words, we need ideas, we need clear thinking. But then we need to go beyond them. We need to climb to the top of the 100-foot pole and then leap off, as one teacher put it. We need to sort of go somewhere else. So this Bhavana Maya Prajna, it's wisdom through meditating. It's when we actually see the truth of things with those light bulb moments. It's also becoming the truth. We become the truth. It's whole body knowledge. It's not just head knowledge. It's we are it. It combines, it's not just head knowledge, it's certainly head and heart knowledge. It comes through a faculty which, combines the two, which is just knowing the way we know that something is beautiful, for example. It's not like we can't figure that out and say it's beautiful because of A plus B equals C. It combines head and heart. The closest we get to it right now is Shraddha, is that sometimes translated as faith, very badly as faith. It's what Sangha calls the response of what's ultimate in us to what's ultimate in the universe. We just sort of know some things are right. And that's as close as we get to it now, but taken up to a higher level, that's what Maya Pranyaya is going to be like. It's going to be insight, whole body insight, head and heart together. So it's not head knowing. When we get to the final point, it unites the head and the heart. So it combines. We've contrasted the approach of Aksobya, the Vajric approach, cut through, see clearly, cut through the obstacles, cut through untruthfulness. We've contrasted that with the approach of Amitabha, the Padma approach, sitting opposite him on the Mandala, through the positive emotions, through cultivating metta, through cultivating faith, cultivating beauty. It combines the two. When we get to the end, there is no contrast, there is no conflict between those two approaches to enlightenment, which is why we need both of them, which is why either one of us is going to be like having a bird with one wing or a bike with one wheel or something. We need both of them, because in the end, to get to wisdom, wisdom is not going to be something we know with our head, or not something we feel with our heart, but something that we, whatever we do with a word that we haven't got, with both of them. So we need them both. So, we need Aksobya, but we need Amitabha as well.